Welcome back to the Other Side Lifestyle Podcast with Jim and Aram. Today we have a very pleasant, very calm white guy from the East Coast. Nothing triggers him. He was never kicked off social media for no reason whatsoever. He likes them diced. He doesn't like them sliced. We're talking about tomatoes. We are with the young superstar, Ryan Yusella. How are you, Ryan?
I'm hanging in there. We're doing good. It's nice that it's Friday.
Yeah. We were just talking a whole lot of trash for a little bit before getting on, just to get it out of our system so that we don't totally get canceled for the things that we say. Right, Aram?
Well, eventually. I mean, the reality
That's
is
the
that
goal.
I think as
Sometimes you got to
gain
get the garbage out. You got to get the garbage out so the good stuff flows.
I think as I start to gain more and more notoriety and you stay very much average and the same, I have to be the one that gets canceled. So I actually end up doing you a service because then you'll have more room to grow.
Now, will we visit Aram in jail is the question.
I don't need visitors. You don't want to see me in that condition. I'll probably run that motherfucker.
Oh, see, now we have to go. You're
going to own it?
I'm telling you. I don't know. If you guys ever seen the movie Shot Caller, I will be that dude. I'm going to end up running that place. After a couple
Do you
of
have space for any prison tattoos? Or do you have any room left? Like, all you got is your head and face.
I'll probably do like this. Just all of this here, and then
just all that.
Maybe my
So you can shave the beard and put some under there, and then grow the beard back.
That's what I'll do. Yeah. I'll just shave the head completely, shave the beard, get that whole.
Oh, you would look like the Shot Caller, dude, if you just trim the beard down. That's correct. Oh, yeah, I see it now.
Do you think you'll ever get your head tattooed, sir?
Me, I thought about it. I mean, I went pretty high up back here.
Yeah,
it's basically
that counts as head.
Have the tattoos helped with the crippling insecurity?
No, it's actually gotten worse.
Shit. Damn it. I was rooting for you.
I know, me too. It was money,
not a solution. It's not a solution.
I'll provide a little bit of a backstory on Mr. Meatball Methods here.
Meatball.
Mm-hmm. So Ryan and I have actually been in touch for a long time. I had reached out to him at one point because I was trying to refer him some clients, and he was actually busy and couldn't take people on, which is actually a great problem to have as a trainer. Ryan's probably one of the only people I know back east who are still doing things the old school right way, which is actually training people on the floor of a gym, which apparently is a dying art that nobody knows how to do anymore. And people don't want to do it anymore because they don't want to trade dollars for money or time for money. But we do want Ryan to start to become a little bit more of an online presence because he does have a very big brain. He's got a very big personality. He's got a lot of good stuff to say within the mess of stuff that he gets himself in trouble for, but that's also part of who he is as a person, and that's what makes him as alluring as he is. So Ryan, how long you been in this business for? What got you started? Why do you happen to be one of the more brainy showcase people out there? Because it's something that's really refreshing because we don't see much of it.
Well, I've come across a lot of trainers and a lot of coaches over the years, and I'm not saying that you need to have a decent background in education or go for higher education or anything like that, because I know a lot of coaches and trainers who are right out of high school and they know their shit. They did their research and everything like that. But I initially started off, I did my undergraduate in biology at East Stroudsburg. I got a master's there as well in exercise science. I finished off the back end with a 500-hour internship at Princeton University. So I worked with all their strength and conditioning athletes for, I think it was October till that end of December for a couple months. So
How long ago was that?
I'm 33 now. So I finished out probably, I want to say 23. So we're actually about 10 years ago now.
Was Matt Fleacop part of the staff? Strength conditioning at that time?
JD is still there. Jason is still there. I think he's still the head strength and conditioning coach.
Okay.
Angeline Brambley Moyer, I believe her name was one of the female coaches there, and she was a freaking badass. She kicked some ass, man. She ran her teams really freaking strict and really hard. She had women's basketball, she had field hockey, I think. There were a bunch of them, but they trained hard. And it's really interesting because I look back when I was in that space, and I was coming out of my master's program, and I thought that I should have been doing better than I was. And I
How
look
so?
back 10 years now, and I sit there and I'm like, I didn't know shit. I actually didn't know shit. So I started weight training around 13, 14, whatever. My dad used to take me into the weight room at his high school, and he would tell me, don't touch anything. Yeah, that worked well. Um, but that started probably at the age of like really young, like 6, 7. I was like kind of just like fucking around doing that. Started weight training with football in high school, went to college through it. Football, track and field, was supposed to go to track and field in college. Blew out my hamstring for like the billionth freaking time on my left side, and it was just like not happening. But back end, going to the end of like grad program in Princeton and everything like that, finished off, moved back to PA. And it just like, I thought I knew a lot back then, and I look and I see there was so much that hadn't even been exposed to me yet. I worked at a real estate company for 4 years after finishing my grad program, and I saved money. Then I moved to New York here, and I literally had like $2,000 in my savings account. And I got a job with Equinox, and I started busting my ass, and that's kind of where we ended up. And I just kind of started doing my own thing here. I've been to a couple different gyms, worked at a bunch of different places here, have rosters 15 to 20 clients at a time, which is absolutely insane to actually keep up with, which I'm sure you guys understand. When you have that many clients, it's like you can't even walk at the end of the week.
No.
But
how long were you at Equinox for?
I believe like 3.5 years. I want to say it was like I literally started like a sneeze into 2019. I think it was like I got like the job approval like the end of December, and I was pretty much moving to New York in like 3 weeks.
Did they make you sign a non-compete?
All Equinoxes and Lifetime Athletics will make you sign non-competes. Most gyms in the state will. But it's a very funky line, because it's like one of those things where it depends actually, I believe, how they put you on like their taxes and stuff. Like if you're a W-2 and you're an employee, now you're a little more locked in. Some places will put you on like a 1099 or like a outside contractor. And even if they tell you certain stuff, you realistically don't have to listen, because you're actually an outside contractor. They're just paying you, and it's a really funky gray area. But that's really where it gets interesting. I made it to tier 3 plus at Equinox.
Oh wow, okay.
So that
nice. That's just under tier 4.
Yeah, I was actually at the time, I was in the program for starting a tier X program at the Equinox in Brooklyn Heights.
Okay.
But then all the shit with COVID happened, and things got locked down, and they wanted us to all charge people the same amount for distance coaching. They were trying to charge people $155 for a virtual session and no gym access.
What?
Yeah, I'm like, that's absurd. Like, that's not the same thing. Their argument
it's not even close to the same thing.
No, their argument was, well, their memberships are all frozen right now, so they're not paying a monthly membership, so they can pay full price for the training. And I'm like,
that's still bullshit.
I'm like, I said straight up, yeah.
You could potentially argue it in the sense that this is what you're paying for this trainer's time, and you're still taking that same amount of time. Like that could be the way that it's presented.
Sure.
You're not paying to have access to the gym. You're paying for the trainer's time, and if you want it, this is what it costs. I mean, so I can understand that. It feels like bullshit at first, but then when you start to think of it like that, like you said, if the membership's frozen,
trainers were fucking happy just to have a job during COVID, let alone doing everything they could to stay afloat. There was like restaurants in New York City. These people were like erecting sculptures and rooftops and wherever they could to try to.
Yo, man, I was on what is it called? I was on unemployment for a couple months until I like got my shit together.
I made $32,000 selling weight equipment at exaggerated prices over COVID. It was awesome. I
hacked a couple spin bikes that I was turning some exercise equipment. I would drive into PA and pick stuff up and then sell it in New York.
Smart.
The part he left out is he broke into people's houses, took stuff. Yeah, that's the part he left out of that story.
This is actually my ninja attire. This is what I steal shit in. So,
yeah. So you're no longer
some nicer clothes.
You're no longer with Equinox. You're on your own now.
Well,
I'm on my own, and I'm also a one of the trainers here at Harbor Fitness at Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Okay.
So I do that. I have a couple clients there that I work with, and then I have my distance people, and I have a couple private clients on the side as well. Um, and then it's just kind of like all the dialoguing and the check-ins and stuff like you
yeah.
see, where that becomes a decent amount. It becomes a lot of a day.
Yeah. I have a question to go back to when you were saying you knew nothing.
Mhm,
I think it's important even for people like new trainers and
mhm,
whatever, people to kind of hear and understand. You have the master's degree, and I have the same undergrad and same master's, and you
mhm.
learn all this stuff. But you're saying you knew nothing once you got there on the floor with these people. Is it you knew nothing because, hey, we learned all this stuff in school and the application of it's very different? Or was it, hey, there's things that I simply did not learn in all this schooling?
The biggest thing that I can probably say about higher education is they're not realistically preparing you to go out into the world. They're teaching you to learn, and they're
Yeah.
teaching you background knowledge, and they're teaching you to have a toolbox. So no, they aren't giving you all of the actual, I would say, like your functional tools of like, here's how you sell, here's how you're personal with people. Like if you're going to be a coach and a personal trainer, you probably need to be able to interact with people decently, or no one's going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good you are at anything. If people don't like you, no one's going to pay you. It's just
Yeah.
that simple. Like,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's in the freaking name. It's personal training. So like
Yeah.
you look at it this way, and you have to. It's not why I think like a lot of young trainers are very like super energetic and they have good personalities. And you see people they do well because they have good personalities, but they may not have the background knowledge, and then the clients don't necessarily know the difference because it's your job to be the experienced one. But when I got done my coaching and all this stuff, or got done my master's program and all this stuff, even going through my internship, we were required to develop a 52-week program for X, Y, and Z team or whatever it is. And you had to have 52 weeks of the year completely plotted out. I look back at that now and I'm like, it looks like a monkey with a crayon wrote this. Like, it's horrible. But like, I look back on that,
Why did
like,
you
you
use a
look back
crayon?
at,
Why
well,
did you use a
the
crayon?
pen ran out of ink, and that's what I was left with, and all I had was the purple crayon. So that's
Yeah,
what we
it's
used.
understandable. It's understandable.
But
So
it's really interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
what's the demographic you're currently servicing now? Is it mostly Gen Pop?
A lot of my in-person people are Gen Pop, and some of my distance people are a little more competitive. So I have a couple powerlifters on my service. I have she's a professional wrestler now. I have a couple people who do some aerialist work. It just depends. It's actually a pretty broad range where I do get Gen Pop people, but then I actually get people who have like my one guy had a double hernia surgery about 12 months ago, and I had been working with him for like maybe like 2 months, and then he had to go in for a double hernia that had apparently just been there for a while. And 9 months post-op, we're actually back to hitting like 400s on deads and stuff, and 300s on squats and stuff. And
It's
that's
pretty
about
fast.
where he left off prior to the hernia surgery. So when you have surgery, the biggest thing is really importance of just like reestablishing as soon as possible so you don't lose. But it's a pretty broad range. I've even started to dabble into like some like deep tissue work as a hobby because my body's been pretty messed up over the years. And I've worked with my buddy who I actually met at Equinox. His name's Javed, and he works out of the Bronx. But he also works for New York Langone. But best massage therapist I've literally come across in the entirety of my lifetime. And I've been worked on by a lot of freaking people. There were a lot of people I went into and I left, and I'm like, I don't even feel like you did anything, and I paid you X amount of money, and I'm actually upset. Um, Similar
Well,
thing
it's
with
a
coaching. Yeah.
it's a very unknown field. So when it comes to like body work or physical therapy, anything that's based on actually getting people to function better from a joint by joint perspective, people
Hmm.
think that, oh, I'm tight, I just need a deep tissue massage. Well, you're tight because something along the
Hmm.
kinetic chain is being thrown off, and you need to be able to address probably something above or below that one area that's actually being affected. So
Hmm.
it takes somebody with a really, really deep diagnostic knowledge of the human anatomy to be able to really poke around And then also, and I'm sure you can speak to this, Ryan, like it's fucking unpleasant as shit to be on one of those tables for 30 to 60. Like if you have somebody who knows what they're doing and they're doing trigger point release, they're doing Graston on you, like they are digging deep, 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 deep. And you are over there biting wood to try to get through it.
I've actually done so a couple pretty big massage sessions with my guy, and it's probably the longest one. I think we went like pretty much like one session straight through. I think he did 6 or 7 hours the one time.
Jesus.
And the thing is when you have a training background that's kind of similar to mine, where I've been just jamming myself under tons of steel for almost 20 years, like a lot of 600-pound, close to 700-pound squats for a lot of years. And this tissue gets really compacted and it gets really twisted and it gets really mangled, especially if you've had enough injuries. Where I tell people with deep tissue work and massage, it's just one other tool and it will not fix end all be all. The massage work is made to create an environment that you are able to physically move into new positions, and something might have been hanging you up because it just got too fucked up over time. Like I've injured both pecs like how many freaking times in pec strains and
You tore
tweaks.
yours, right?
I did, and I also had I had this bicep reattached.
Right. I remember that. That was one of the more recent injuries, right?
That will be in September. That'll be a full 3 years actually right now.
Okay.
And that injury actually exacerbated quite a few things. You'd be surprised how much only using one side of your body for like 6 months actually does. And that's fine if it's making you use your weak side, but my right side was my dominant side. So I was using my left hand for everything, even cooking and everything like that, because this thing was in like one of those rheumatic bruises. And my right side, I got even more twisted to the right. And it's actually causing a lot of the nerve pain I get down my leg and stuff and through this hip over time that we're kind of been cleaning up. Even getting the numbness in my foot to go away. Like my right foot's about a quarter numb right now. It's been like that since Thanksgiving, so it'll come back.
So guys, stop trying to get so big. Learn from these two beasts' injuries, and just stay small like me. You know, just a
you want to know
lean
something pretty fucked
190.
up? You know what I tore the bicep doing? It wasn't even lifting.
It was jacking off, wasn't it?
Similar motion. I was throwing it. I actually have it on video. It was a 12-pound medicine ball. I was doing an overhead throw, and on the upswing, the bicep just went gone.
Which it tore by the elbow or it tore by the shoulder?
It was a full distal detachment. So the bicep fully pretty much. I have a picture I could even show you. This sucker. So where there's a little gap here, this pulled out, and this was probably sitting like here.
Fucking Christ.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's kind of funny though, but the interesting thing is just from all the injuries over time, this has kind of spiraled up into a bicep tear. So having a big imbalance at the hip or at the rib cage will cause you extremity imbalances as well. So if you've been super compressed in your rib cage and super twisted at your pelvis, nothing in the human body is realistically linear. Like it's all in circle and spirals and like rotation. So we need to understand, like, no, asymmetries are not realistically a big problem, but if they become big enough, now they actually are an issue. Where if you're really loading and you have a big asymmetry and you're putting a ton of weight on it, or you're doing like, let's say like 2,000 golf swings in a session, or you're doing like 20,000 racket swings in one direction and there's no reversal, you will get really twisted one direction. It's just the law of physics at that point. Like it has to go that way.
Well, that symmetry conversation gets very, very old because I do follow a lot of people who are DPTs and physical therapists, and then there's a couple of different schools of thought. The one that I think that annoys me the most is that like you're supposed to be perfectly symmetrical on both sides of the body, or like if you're not, then something is going to be thrown off. The reality is people have different arm lengths, people have different leg length discrepancies, people have hip hikes, people have posterior pelvic tilts, anterior, and we've seen some of the best athletes in the world. They were somebody was the other day was tearing apart LeBron James's feet. and saying like how because he's in narrow shoes and he gets jammed into those shoes, it's going to throw off his gait pattern. Like, this is one of the greatest athletes in the history of sports who runs up and down a court 55,000 times. He's got no problems. So eventually the body does adapt if it gets taken care of. But I think a lot of times people are spending 30, 40, 50 minutes rolling around. And this was something that pissed me off about Equinox, because when I was a tier 3+, they wanted me to go up to tier 4. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not having my clients roll around on the ground in child's pose for 45 minutes and charge them $175 an hour. They came here to sweat and get a workout. That's what they're going to get. So I think sometimes just working with load in a full range of motion, or whatever full range of motion means to you specifically, is how you can actually make injuries better, because you're going to strengthen those ranges of motion.
Well, at the same time, in the midst of that, you can get into that idea of, hey, because we're always going to be asymmetrical, I shouldn't worry about it, which is not a good train of thought.
No.
You know, so what Ryan's saying is like, hey, we might not ever be perfect, but let's not ignore it. Let's still, you know, I'm just saying, for the average person listening thinking, oh, I guess I don't have to worry about it. Well, no, still aim to get close to symmetrical. You don't have to panic about it. But if you're completely ignoring the asymmetry, you know, even just guys having wallets in their back pocket for 15, 20 years and they're sitting on it. Now your hips are different. Yeah. One hip's always kind of up. Your spine compensates for it. It's a little bit crooked. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're walking around with this slightly crooked spine, and people think one leg's longer than the other. It's like, no, your hips are crooked. And this causes this, you know, adjustment in the spine. And then you have back problems, and it's all from sitting on a wallet. You know, so yeah, we're never going to be perfectly symmetrical. You don't have
to. A lot of my stuff came from sitting in the car like an asshole. I would literally slouch down, lean into my right dash, and lean this way. And now all my right side from all the years of doing that plus the loading is what it's like, the lifestyle plus everything else that actually starts to change a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah. Was your seat reclined so that when you looked left, you were looking out the back window? Were you that guy in that position?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I just like always used to slouch because like even from like a young age, I remember my freaking backs and hip used to hurt, and for some reason slouching felt better. It like actually just felt better until it didn't.
It takes more work. It takes more work to sit up straight, so that you slouch.
It really does, yeah.
And then all of a sudden that disc gets pushed enough, and you're like, oh, there's that pain that I didn't feel forever because it was more comfortable slouching like that. Yeah, it's just
cool
that wear and tear over time. Yeah,
it's cool until it's not. Like the biggest thing I think with asymmetries is I don't think we should necessarily, like you were saying, I don't think we should necessarily make it the end all be all. And I don't necessarily think in most people it's going to be a problem until it is causing pain or we're getting performance decrease. So it's like, even I see this in some of my power lifters and some of the people who just want to be strong. You get your left heel falling off the floor, and now your one leg is twisting, and you can't really keep a brace very well because your feet aren't even really equal on the floor. And now we're losing a whole lot of horsepower because I'm leaving a third of my leg not doing anything. So like if we're looking for performance on some of those things, yeah, people can lift really twisted and you're not going to be perfectly symmetrical, but getting some more out of your weak side is most likely going to help you pretty often, at least in regards to lifting. In regards to speed and things like that, those are things that just physically need to be trained through moving quicker and better positioning and throwing and dynamic work. You're never going to be perfectly symmetrical, but if it's giving you an issue, it probably should be addressed.
When it comes to the Gen Pop folks that you're working with, and you're having people come in for the, you know, let's say for the first session, what are some of the issues that you're seeing with folks as far as either weaknesses or things that need to be immediately dealt with to start to get them on the right path?
We're seeing issues that we didn't really see 30, 40, 50 years ago, where we're actually seeing people's like spines and structures are starting to just collapse on them. Where if you've sat long enough and you've been detrained enough, you're just like falling forward all day, and your thoracic spine is the only thing holding your head up anymore. And it's like, I get people all the time who get pins and needles in their hands. They get numbness down their hands. They get stuff down the legs and stuff like that. And it's from a lot of compression and poor positioning. It doesn't necessarily
laptops aren't helping. Even that, I mean, just going from computers to laptops, people don't realize the difference. On a computer,
they shouldn't sit with them on your lap. They're horrible on your lap.
Well, even just if it's on your desk. Think about if my computer's raised like a typical monitor and my keyboard's down here, I'm automatically looking higher. On the laptop with the little square mouse thing, not using an actual mouse, you're hunched over, looking down. You automatically, just in that position, you're in a worse place. So obviously we have more people who are spending time looking at their phones. We have more people who have jobs just sitting and looking at a computer. You add laptops to that, it's just making it even worse because they're just sitting in that crouched position. It's terrible.
You even get people in New York who work for, like, let's say a driving company, and they spend all week driving in a car for like an Uber or something like that.
Yeah,
And it's a
terrible.
bucket seat, and they're actually horrific on your freaking spine.
Yeah, I mean, low back surgeries, it's the top two causes are sitting, driving. You see truck drivers who need the low back surgery, or people who are, heavy loads getting hurt from things like that. But yeah, people don't really sitting.
So what you're talking about, Ryan, is postural in nature. So when we're talking about a postural issue, what are some of the things that we can start doing with those folks to get them to start to straighten themselves out a little bit?
One thing that I actually started, and I think and this is actually very recent in the last couple of weeks, and this is something my massage therapist gave me. I've been putting up some stuff about even just spending some time on yoga blocks each day, even a couple minutes. Like, what I'll do is you can do a couple different levels of yoga block across like your upper T-spine, and actually just let some extension happen and get your spine used to moving forward in space again. Do like 2 minutes on your T-spine of just some like actual restful breathing over top of a block, and maybe 2 under your tail, and actually let your hips extend a little bit for the first time all day. So it's like,
you're describe specifically when you're saying you're laying on the block is between your shoulder blades, and you're letting your thoracic, your chest basically coming forward. I just want that picture to be real clear for people, because I don't want them to think spine going forward, and that means they want their head jutting forward.
It would be like here against your spine, and you would do long ways so your shoulder blades can still kind of go. And then I like the one I go long ways this way, right under. You're going to pretty much think about the in-between space between where your tail is and your dimples. So I actually, when I set people up, I want you to put your tail right on top of this block. And if I see your private parts tip any direction besides nice and forward, you're on the wrong part of it. So all you're kind of looking for is to find nice extended hips. And if you don't extend your hips very well, this is a little decent entry point to spend a couple each day, where if extension is painful, here's a good place to find some extension. And it's also, if you spent all day huddled around a screen, all you need to do is lay over the freaking thing. And I do this once or twice a day. I usually wake up in the morning and I try to bring myself out of my sleeping positions with it. Maybe when I get to work at like 6 or 5:30 or whatever the heck it is, somewhere around then. And then probably for like, it's like 4 minutes right before you climb into bed. And it also gets you away from like all the screens, all the technology. You lay down, you breathe, you focus on breathing and actually dialing down your system before you actually just jump and dive into bed. Yeah. You don't need an insanely wild bedtime routine. You just need a routine. Yeah. Like those are the best things.
Yeah, people don't even realize, even when you're talking about hip extension, I mean, how many more issues are we going to have with women in the near future with everybody trying to poke their butt out? They're just walking around and they think that in their head, they might be going, I'm extending my hip. It's like, no, you're not. You're actually flexing your hip when you stick your butt out to try to make it look bigger. How many issues are people going to have just because of that?
Squats and grow a nice thick butt, but that's just my opinion.
Or you can just poke your little pooper out.
Yeah, separate L3, separate L3, L4 for a little while. See how they feel after about 2 days. Yeah.
Are there
they get really cranky. Then your belly pours forward,
and then you're a misogynist.
That's a big problem, and I see that a lot in my female clients is that anterior pelvic tilt that leads to some really, really inactive and very weak core muscles. I hate
especially post pregnancy.
Sorry, I said it.
We'll just say midsection. It's easier.
Midline. So that's a thing. So can you talk to people, especially, I mean, we do have a lot of female listeners, about how to encourage better breathing and bracing to keep backs safe and to start to get women to understand that it's not that they have a weak core, it's that they just don't actually use their core during a lot of the movements that they're performing.
A lot of the things that we actually see specifically in women is so women are a little anatomically different than men, clearly. So sternum is actually a little bit shorter, just because it makes room for having babies. The upper clavicular fibers in females are stronger because they're actually made for carrying children to be stronger in that realm. So you see probably a lot of your female clients with insanely tight upper pecs and super gummed up rib cages. Now, what happens is if you're a little chesty, you'll fall forward really quickly, especially if you've been playing mom for a while or you've been holding a kid on one side. You get really rotated, really compressed, and you probably won't be able to feel your torso if your ribs are all gummed the crap up. And they're just like, what actually happens is your ribs actually collapse on the front side. And then because you're a little chesty, it actually just covers it up. And then what happens is you either just extend really hard here and flare your ribs, or you just let that bump come forward. Now your head falls forward. So a lot of the things about like pelvic floor health and bracing and a lot of these abdominal things where women get tons of issues even after kids with like secondary brown pains and getting like even just from all the stretching of like having a child, and maybe there's something going on with any, if there's any ripping or tearing during childbirth. Now you got to wait for that to heal, but then you also need to reestablish torso strength, not just in the frontal plane. You need to strengthen your low back, you need to strengthen your side flanks, and you also need to be able to bend and rotate a little bit. If you don't have some of these really basic skills, you can squeeze at your freaking belly all you want. All you're going to do is pull your sternum down. Like all you're going to do, you're almost overly crunching, where it's not really.
Well, that's where
crunch.
there's a difference between crunching and bracing.
Sure.
I mean, to me, the easiest way to explain to somebody to brace is pretend like I'm going to punch you in the stomach.
Yeah.
Pretend like I'm going to punch you in the side, you know.
When I cue bracing anymore, I'm actually telling people I want you to think about your low belly region, and I want you to think about where your tailbone is. And I want you to kind of keep good posture, but pull your tailbone under without letting like your whole like backside just dump under.
Yeah.
So all I'm thinking about is trying to pull my tail under, and you find your obliques and your midsection pretty quickly. So I don't need to drop my torso. All I really need to do is think about correcting my tail a little bit.
Like you're holding the shit in.
The yoga block work is actually a nice entry point on this because it actually drives your pelvis into a forward position. And if you try to just pull your tail under a little bit, your low abdominals scream right immediately, because guess what? You just put your pelvis in place. If you're fighting for positioning all day, you're really not going to be very accurate at what you're trying to do. It's like you got to work at a better neutral, and got to work at like kind of almost restoring the posture you lost through childbirth and the abdominal weakness that you got through childbirth. I've worked with quite a few females who are like on their second and third kid, and like they feel like they're freaking crippled because their midsection, it was like back to back to back. And it's like their midsection got so inherently weak. You're getting sciatic nerve pain, you're getting lumbar pain, you're getting tons of like neck and sacrum pain and all this stuff down the backside because like you don't have anything supporting you in your like biggest area. One thing I have actually found as well is if we have digestive issues, fixing your pelvis and rib cage is a really good direction for changing your digestive issues. Because guess what? Everything fits inside your thorax very specifically, and it's not realistically made to go anywhere else. If I'm like really dumping my tail back in space, now I just changed my bladder position, my intestinal position, my stomach position,
Like
and I just kind of put my lungs in a really piss poor position for even breathing. So it's like you're just putting everything in a bad space. If we can get back to where like somewhat of a neutral-ish is for our resting positions, that's kind of what we look for.
I see it in young guys too, where they're trying to develop their chest. So they're constantly doing chest. Yep. But not even that. It's the opposite, where they're constantly doing their chest and they're not spending time on their back. So now they actually aren't standing up straight. You add to that, if they have a little bit of fat on their body, they want to hunch over so their shirt hangs a little bit better. and hide whatever fat might be showing. So you see that same hunched over thing with guys, maybe for different reasons, where it's like, no, you got to strengthen your back. And actually, if you stood up straight, your chest would look bigger. And they just keep overdoing the front of their body. And then on the phone and then the laptop and all those things just add to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why
like, when I was in high school and stuff, cell phones were still a new thing when I was back in school. Like,
they didn't exist.
I had like a Nokia block or like a Razor phone or something like that. Like I kind of miss them now.
Dude, I remember my Motorola flip phone. I love that.
You remember the good ringtones that used to come with them? All the old, like, you used to download the badass ringtones, and now everyone's phone's been on silent for like a decade.
I know, like $1.99. I remember when texting came out. I'm like, this is so stupid. Just call me. And then after a certain point, I'm like, per text. Oh, you'd pay per text.
Like,
people would pay.
You get 1,000 text messages. Like,
I think if you received it, it might have been free, or it was cheap if you received it. And I remember like this one guy is like trying to be the guy who texts, and I'm like, stop texting me. I got to pay every time you text me. I'm like, just call me, you idiot. And then at a certain point, you're like, please don't call me. Just.
And now it's the other way around.
Yeah, I don't want to hear your voice.
Now you just sign your soul over for like free data, unlimited texting, and unlimited calls, and you just jab at it all day.
All day. All day.
It all goes.
So Ryan, you're in a major metropolitan area, obviously being in New York, and I think that actually folks that live in places like that are probably arguably a lot more active than people that probably live out in the Midwest. People that live in California have to drive everywhere, right? Because a lot of people are taking public transit, they're walking from place to place. So I think in general, like even your average New Yorker is probably taking more steps and is a lot less sedentary than your average other person in the United States. Do you kind of see a benefit from that? And does that cross over as you're training clients? Are you seeing that type of stuff when you're training people?
So I would say with New York specifically, at least, I think the activity definitely helps a lot more. But I will also say the fact that Seamless and Uber Eats and all of these things here kind of almost like cancel that out immediately, because you literally just like doot and food's here. That doesn't exist where my parents live in Pennsylvania. You have to go get this crappy food if you want.
Where in PA? I didn't ask. Where in PA?
You know where Berks County?
Bucks County?
Berks, Berk.
Oh, Berks. No, I grew up in Bucks.
You know where Reading is?
Yeah.
Reading. Yeah,
Reading.
right outside of it's they're right between Reading and Kutztown. My dad actually went to Kutztown College.
Nice.
He was actually an all-state basketball player through younger years, high school, and college. I think he's still on the wall there at Kutztown.
Does he still talk about it? Is he one of those guys?
He does sometimes, but I mean, he's been through some shit. So
yeah.
My dad's had 4 valve replacements. So
Jesus.
4 different valve. Yeah, he's had pig valve.
He's like a fucking Pontiac.
Yeah, he's had a T-VAR done, and he also had he just got a mechanical one, not even maybe like 8 months ago. So he's still recovering from that one. He just turned 71. So he's not old, but he's been through some shit.
You come from good stock, Ryan. You're gonna be just fine.
Well, interesting thing with the reason why he had all the heart stuff, it wasn't lifestyle based stuff. So he was born with a congenital issue with his aortic valve. His aortic valve didn't actually close properly, and they checked me for this when I was younger. So I don't know. They checked me for it back then, and they said no, everything's fine. But the realistic thing we kind of look at here is everything fine back then, or is it something that's going to happen and wear out short term in like 40s and 50s? Yeah. But he had been having issues, I think, up until that point. And I mean, I don't think I haven't had any issues realistically that I can see. Like I've gotten like an occasional high blood pressure from just simply not moving enough and too much freaking caffeine over time. But that's usually
being aggressively angry, like things like that.
Yeah, sometimes every now and then. But guess what?
Being on TRT,
being on East Coast living.
If nothing gets your blood pressure up, then you're not really living. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Nothing gets your blood pressure up, then you're not really living.
Yeah, I run high. I'm like 145 over 90.
I think it's like usually like and this was even like this back when I was in high school, but like I ran into the issue even in high school where I had to get one of the larger cuffs to take my blood pressure.
Same.
So like, guess what? Those super little cuffs that only go to a 14 centimeter arm or a 14-inch arm or whatever it is, if your arm's 15 inches, it's going to be high. If it's anything
Yeah.
past that amount, it's going to be high. I still remember I was probably like 17 and my dad had been taking his blood pressure all the time. And he's like, come and take this. And he put it on my arm and it came out like 198 over 90. And he's like, oh my God. We bring the thing into the freaking doctor and the doctor looks at me and looks at the cuff and is like, you need a thigh cuff. I'm like, I told you, I feel fine. Like,
Winner.
yeah, I think it usually sits around like 130, 135 over like
That's not
maybe
bad.
80, 75.
That's not bad.
And it's like, even like I had bought one of these for a while and this thing doesn't fit my wrist anymore. One of those wrist cuffs, the wrist cuff doesn't fit. Yeah.
Put it on your right arm. It probably fits that.
A lot of muscle, a lot of
Well,
scar
Well,
tissue.
they're actually getting pretty close. So
there we go.
this one's
You
to
guys
here.
listening can't see. You'll have to watch this on YouTube.
Pretty
Oh, yeah,
close.
it's pretty even.
There we go.
The right
That's
one's
pretty
actually
even.
bigger than the left one again, which is kind of infuriating because I only used the left one for an entire year. Like, I'm like,
The body remembers everything. It comes
like,
back
listen,
quick.
we want to talk about asymmetries. The mind wants, the body said no.
Yeah.
So Ryan, you're a guy who's been through what at this point some between the bicep, between the pecs, between the hamstrings. You've been through some debilitating injuries that would put most people out of the gym for a length of time, and I think that's a big problem that we're seeing. Right, people get one joint injured, and all of a sudden they put on 20, 30 pounds in 4 or 5 months because they just won't go completely sedentary. Can you kind of just talk about some of the recovery protocols, how you were able to keep yourself active during, I mean, obviously you have a much greater knowledge base than your average gen popper does, but between stuff like lifestyle, sleep, nutrition, hydration, recovery, what were the types of things that you were doing to keep some bare minimum activity going so that you weren't letting yourself get to these bad places?
The biggest thing that I found a lot more use for, and about a year and a half ago, I actually hired a coach and I started working with him because I had got tired of spinning my tires because I had several forward progresses on getting my body to where I want it, and then I would have a rebound and I'd be MIA for 6 to 10 weeks. So that had been happening on and off for like probably like 7 years. And I thought I'd be getting a little closer and then it would get messed up again. A little closer, get messed up again. The biggest thing I think I found is deep tissue work has probably been the most restorative thing because, at least in my case, but my case is a little bit different because I've been throwing myself at steel for 15 to 20 years, where most people, I would say even most people, look for a good massage therapist that actually knows how to work with you and that you can go to like once a month or what. Like, I would rather people go to massage therapists than chiropractors every single day of the week.
Same.
Because if you're going to a chiropractor, all they're doing is some of them are a little more holistic now. I will give the credit. Some of them are a little more physio type and they do a little bit more of the actual integrative stuff. It's not just snap and crack like when like you guys and I guys were growing up and it was like, oh, well, come in, crack. All right, see you guys.
Yep.
Now they're learning a little bit more, I think. But I think if you are having disc issues, you need to address the movement and the tissue issues. Like my massage therapist always says, he's like, and this is a kind of coined term, I don't know where he got it from, but he always says the issue's in the tissue. And it always is in the tissue unless you
have skeletal trauma, yeah.
Yes, unless you have like missing cartilage or like a detached ACL or you like physically ripped tendon off the bone or something like that. The issue's still in the tissues, and tissue will also store toxins. So we look at this, and even going to get some deep tissue work for like, oh, well, my one quad's been all like gummy for like, I don't know, as long as I can remember. That's not healthy tissue. So this actually, I believe the massage helps with where like training helps to build up muscle. I think massage helps to break down muscle in a much more controlled method. And it actually allows rehealing and red and white blood cells to get into areas that standardly would not be able to get in there. Like I felt what my hip felt like 4 years ago. I felt what my pecs felt like 4 years ago. There was literal crunchies and calcium deposits and scar tissue. Like I have literally, there's like a 3-inch section in my right thigh that's probably the length of my thumb, and it feels like the gnarliest knot that I have ever felt. And there was definitely a tear there at some point. So if you there's injury that occurs over time, even just with regular training.
Sure.
And getting the restorative stuff in there somewhere, it's not, doesn't mean you need to take weeks off at a time. You can slip this in as something that's very simple in your repertoire once a month or once every 6 weeks. Maybe you need to go a little more at the start and then you taper it off over time. But like digging through these areas is actually how you can create symmetry without directly needing to correct symmetry.
And don't
Where
go to
it's like,
hand and stone for the massage that he's describing here.
yeah,
This isn't a
like
hand and stone
we don't
massage.
want like Aram walking out ready to freaking circle jerk you off, but we like actually
Yes.
want some deep tissue work going on here,
Yes.
where like it's not that tissue, it's all the tissue around that tissue that's actually the problem.
Yeah.
So you even see this a lot of times where like I've seen a lot of female clients who are getting nerve pain in their hips and in their sacrum and in their legs and a lot of stuff like this. And a lot of this has just come from impinged tissue over time, where you get a lot of impingement in like the little groin muscles right along the front of the hip. And you have the obturator nerve, which sits right in the front of the hip and runs down to your tailbone, kind of. It's like a little muscle runs right through there, and there's a nerve bundle right there. If that gets clamped down on, you get butt pain when you sit, and it's freaking miserable. You guys might have experienced this at some point, and people call it sciatic nerve pain. The two of them kind of like battle with each other between the sciatic nerve and the obturator nerve. And the only thing that's really helped with that, where I was so stiff and so locked up, you can't stretch it out at some point. Like you actually can't work it out at some point. If something's compacted enough, it's going to have to be dug out, where you see massage therapists are physically putting muscles back in place. Like you're re-rotating a shoulder, you're opening a pec and putting a joint back in place, or you're working out portions of a quad and a calf that's going to unlock someone's knee that won't track properly. And some of these things actually just can't be exercised. Like if you can't even get close to the positioning that you need to be in, you're probably not going to do a whole lot if you don't get there. So it's like, if your hips have been jacked up enough time, I have a couple guys I've worked with. The one guy I work with, he has a 10-stage fusion in his upper T-spine. So pretty much from like the base of his neck to the middle of his shoulder blade is completely fused. And then he has a couple other bulging discs in his low back. And he's been thrown off a horse over the years. He's been in a car accident or two, been weight training, played golf. Like he's lived hard. But you look, and he can even still benefit from that deep tissue work, and he gets deep tissue work done regularly. Because if you've had surgery and you've trained and you've lived, you're going to have scar tissue and you're going to have bound up stuff. And like the stretching is very important, and the mobility work and the range work is very important. But even the simple fact of massage and like hot and cold therapy in like moderation, not saying you need to do it every single day, but even the fact of like going to like what was it, I went to my first Korean spa the other day. My girlfriend took me for it, and they had multiple hot rooms. There were different temperature rooms with different things. There were resting beds. There was red and blue light, where like you pay for entrance and you can float between all these things and eat
That's cool.
and rest and hydrate. And you can get massage work there if you want. You don't have to. But the thing is some of these things that have been very restorative, they're very beneficial every couple weeks or even once a month, and they're not insanely expensive.
That's the part I think that scares people off, because a lot of times, like, you know, you'll go to PT because insurance pays
$200,
for it, or
$300.
But the reality is sometimes if you do find a good therapist, they're going to be out of pocket. They're not going to be covered by insurance. They're cash pay only. But if you think about the long-term implications of not spending that money and how it affects your quality of life,
Right there, that right there.
I think being able to sacrifice some of the immediate pleasures of life, like your dinners out, like your Netflix subscriptions, like your meals ordered on Grubhub, you can start to throw together a couple $100 a month and put a budget towards self-care and recovery that I think is going to pay a massive dividend throughout the period of time. And then now, instead of you being a crippled 50, 60, or 70-year-old, Now you're walking around and you're that 80-year-old at the over 55 community that's still training 4 days a week, that's riding their bike, that's playing golf.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts. And I think its problem is we're so aesthetically focused. Everybody 20 to 70, we're worried about nutrition. We're worried about training as a vehicle for fat loss and aesthetic improvement versus understanding that these things are actually contributory to our everyday life and how it trickles into all these other facets. So when you talk to people about lifestyle, nutrition, and training, I'm sure, because I know how you work, you're probably emphasizing the fact that this is going to improve the everyday living ability that you have.
That's the big thing that us as practitioners, as coaches and trainers and stuff like that is, end of the day, I don't care if someone's a bodybuilder or a track athlete or grandma who just wants to be able to walk up a flight of stairs. We're still looking at that quality of life equation down the road. And if you're not, I think you're not doing your job as your number one goal. Like, yes, someone is paying you for that competition, or someone is paying you to lose 20 pounds. But if they lose 20 pounds and they're like a wreck in the next 10 years because of something you did, you just did worse. I don't care if they lost 20 pounds. You actually did a disservice to them, and they deserve an apology from you. So it's like, we realistically, it's, you need to be able to offer a better quality of service in these things, where you need to instruct people right too. Like,
that's what it is.
It takes years in there to even get to that place, because at the beginning it's, hey, I'll help you get to that goal. That's what you want. You understand there's going to be consequences? Yep. All right. This is going to be the consequence. Well, let's do it. Okay. And then at a certain point, after you've been doing it for long enough, you're like, I'm not going to take you down this path. You're going to have to find somebody else, and everybody's got to maybe find their own, I guess, moral ground with that over time. I mean, there's so many coaches that all they care about is your physique. All they care about, me and Rob were just talking about it. It's like, I'm only going to respond if I get an update photo. Yeah, am I happy with the programming? Yeah. Am I this or that? Like, whatever those clients might, those are things that coaches should be caring more about with people. Are you enjoying the process?
Or just having the fucking conversation? Like, have that conversation with people. Like, stop. Like, it's very easy to listen to people complain about, I'm not seeing a change on the scale. I'm not seeing this. I'm not seeing that. Well, let's talk about the things that you are seeing. What has been the benefit of this relationship? Have you actually tried to absorb any of the knowledge that's been given to you? Are you using the resources that are being provided? Are you curious and enthusiastic about this process? Because if you're just hating yourself to a certain size, it's not going to stick. None of us that are in shape did it because we hated ourselves. We did it because at some point we realized that it benefited our quality of life. And that's the reason why we keep going. We just get to enjoy an aesthetic benefit as a byproduct.
You even look at this with people trying to cut out like addiction and stuff like that. You have to actually, this is where like they talk about, you have to want it. You do actually have to want to learn and to want to get healthier and want to lose the body fat. If you hire someone and you're sneaking in the chip bag every single night and you're sneaking pretzels and you're doing all this shit and you're just saying, well, like, I hired a coach, so it's fine. Well, like, no, you misunderstand. We're here for information and for guidance. We're not here to drag you physically into the gym or to drag you away from the peanut butter and chips at 10 p.m. Like, you need to be an adult and keep your shit together.
Yeah, you're the one that's making the decisions. None of us are telling. And sometimes you wonder when we post things online. And then there's always, I'm sure, some people that are thinking like, "Don't tell me how to live." It's like, I'm not telling anybody how to live.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck what you. I don't give a fuck what you do.
I don't care what your body looks like. I don't care how you live. These are thoughts that I have about myself, or thoughts that I've had through conversation with people. These are just thoughts. Nobody's telling you how to live. We're not judging you how you live. So now, when you're hiring that person, understand. We're not telling you how to live. We're not. It's not our job. It's exactly what you just said. We're here to guide, help, educate, all that stuff. But you still are ultimately the one that's making those decisions.
And nothing that we're saying hasn't already been said 1,000 times before. None of this stuff is brand new science. None of this stuff has just cropped up over the last 10 or 15 years. This is stuff that's been rooted in our culture as human beings for a long time. It's just we've lost our way in the last 50 or 60 years because society has changed and lifestyles have changed and stressors have changed and environments have changed. But anatomy, biology, and physiology have not changed at all.
I think the thing is like all of the things that we were taught through like our education or whatever it was, or your research or anything like that, this stuff has not changed. The food industry has actually changed, and the ability for consumption has changed. Easy accessibility has changed. Like
Yeah.
a lot of places in the United States, you can actually get booze delivered right to your door. Like you can have alcohol
Dude, ever
delivered
since
to your home.
COVID.
Yeah, that
I
was
mean,
a
COVID
thing.
happens, everything shut down, and the liquor
Yeah.
stores stayed open, and that's when they started delivering alcohol to people. It's
Yeah, and I'm like, I understand on
just the
one side
norm.
of this where you could, I can, okay, I can argue this point of alcohol delivery during that situation simply because you're going to actively have an issue where you have a lot of people who are dependent to live
Yes.
because of
Yes.
needing alcohol,
And then,
and
yeah,
if
but
they do
I
not
still
get that, you'd
struggle.
have people just dying.
That's fine.
Just dying.
I got to be honest. My perspective on that whole thing, that was a bullshit reason to keep it open. To tell me we're going to keep liquor stores open solely for the dependent people, not thinking that you're going to create more dependent people by keeping it open when there's absolutely fucking nothing else to do but sit around and be fucking miserable. You're going to close parks. You're going to close gyms.
Mhm.
You're going to close fucking sitting in the ocean alone. People
Mhm.
getting arrested surfing
Yeah,
alone.
beaches in California.
Yeah.
It's not allowed. So, but
You're
hey,
on the beach
we
without a mask on, and
yeah,
you can't.
we can
Ugh.
deliver food and alcohol to you solely because we're concerned about the alcoholics. I get
The
the
entire thing
potential
is kind
idea,
of
but there's
ridiculous
I'm
when you
just not
think about it.
I'm not
They,
like when
It's
it
like-
comes
they
to that.
didn't want the hospitals to be flooded with all the people going through withdrawal. That was the big thing.
Yeah, but whatever.
But hindsight is
Whatever.
2020
Yeah.
at this point. Like
It realistically,
now we
it's
know
always
better.
2020.
At the same time,
Yeah.
everybody wanted
But it
access to
sounded
alcohol. I'm
fucked at the
thankful I had
time.
access. I'm thankful I had
It sounded
access.
fucked at the time. You're like, oh well, this is happening. You're like, what?
But we saw the consequences of that. You know what I mean? Like, listen, and I'll say it. It could sound hypocritical all day. I'm glad it was open. It was nice to have access to it during that time. Absolutely. But the justification for it and the problems it created is
Shit, man,
whatever,
that was a rough time.
whatever.
I remember I was driving an hour and a half into Jersey 3 times a week just to work
to get
out.
crack. Oh,
Just
To work out.
going to
Were you-
Attilas?
Yeah, we're going to
No,
Attilas.
not Attilas. What is it called? I have a buddy in Carteret who I used to go to. It's like little hole in the wall, old school freaking bare bones gym. Like shit's rusty. There's like blood on bars. It's like you get strong as hell training there.
From fights,
I'm-
not from their skin ripping.
Oh no, man. You would go. I remember back like when I was like still like competing, you would go in there on a Sunday and there would be 4 monoliths running with at least 700 pounds on each one of them. There would be
Jesus
2 or
Christ.
3 benches with 400 plus on each bar, and there would be 2 or 3 deadlift bars rolling with at least 4 to 5 plates on them. So it's like
That's
you
a
went
beast
in,
of a
like,
gym.
dude, there were monsters in there, and some of them were equipped, some of them were clearly on way too much freaking shit, but it was a little hole in the wall where like you went to reinvent something. You literally went to kill something and then make something new because there is nothing else to do there. And sometimes you need that actual atmosphere where you don't get that in standard gym settings anymore. Like where you need to physically go and like kill an old self because it's just not working anymore. Like,
And what a great commentary on identity shift.
mhm.
I mean,
Like-
and that's the basis of all of our change, and that's what we talk about incessantly. So to get people to understand why you haven't made this stick, it's because you still believe that you're that old person that couldn't make it work. And the only person that's going to make it work is the new person that believes they're going to make it work. So it's
Yeah.
That's why I think it's not a coincidence that all of us good coaches are saying the same shit. It's not a coincidence that all of us are reasonably priced. It's not a coincidence that all of us are showing up daily on Instagram, no matter how many likes and follows we have, trying to reach out to our communities, trying to get people to understand the simplicity of this stuff, not overcomplicate it, not jam information down people's throat, but just to empower them to understand that this stuff is really fucking simple, and it's just going to take however long it's going to take. But don't you ever stop doing it, because there's no finish line. That's all.
What's your option? What's your option?
I don't
just
do
had this
anything at all.
conversation with
Yeah.
another coach. I just had this conversation with another coach that I do coaching for, and was getting lots of like actual like lots of pain and stuff in like a lot of nerve areas, and changed a couple things around. 1 week in, wants to change stuff again. I'm like, You have these conversations with people literally day in and day out. What am I going to say to you right now? 6 to 8 weeks. Give it time.
Yep.
Nothing has changed yet. Literally nothing has changed yet.
But you have to confuse the muscle, Ryan, and I think that that's what you're missing when you have people do the same routine. You need
is that where the
confuse
copious amounts of
the
THC
muscle.
come in? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
You have to confuse
Muscle's
the muscle.
confused.
You have to confuse it. You have to see what happens, Ryan, and this is what you're missing because you're young. You have to trick the muscle. You have to trick the body. You have to trick it. This is why we do calorie cycling, to trick the body to get into a fat burning state.
My metabolism's having a powwow with my fucking liver.
Well,
Confusion and trickery.
Like, yo, man, they changed something. What's up? Yo,
oh shit! I guess we better.
What you doing, man? Yo, pancreas. What?
I guess we better grow. And I'm so confused. We should probably get rid of all this fat on my body.
Hold on. Let me just dump some more insulin into the mix and get you real fat.
Yo, man, can you believe our last work meeting? Heart, liver, lungs were all good. Pancreas was tripping.
Pancreas. Well, if you believe the charlatans today, the pancreas should just be removed at this point because we don't need insulin anymore.
Yeah, pretty
instantly
much.
stores carbs.
I mean, you can buy it in stores. Why do I need insulin? I can buy it in stores. Why do I need insulin?
I don't know. Probably to regulate your natural blood sugar so you don't just die. I don't know.
Apparently, insulinic shock is a pretty horrifying thing.
I don't want to go through it. I'd rather be fat than have that happen.
I've seen 2 different people firsthand go into like a pretty bad, like deep blood sugar low. It's not a freaking pretty sight. It's really not a pretty sight. It is bad. Like you can feel like I don't like throwing this term around, but you can feel when someone is teetering with life. Like someone is like staring down that hole, and you can tell this with injury too, or when someone's actually sick. You can see when things are kind of like not turning so well, and you'll see people will go unresponsive like that. You see what happens to people with simple low blood sugar. Now imagine none. Like
none blood sugar.
Like almost none. Where like, guess what? Your brain functions primarily on blood sugar.
Yeah.
So it's like, kind of need this thing a little bit. It's it does a few things, right?
Just a few.
They say. They
say. Any passing final words for our audience here to wrap it all up and give them a nice bow?
I would say they really should give us 8 rotten tomatoes. I don't even know if that's the right
8
term.
diced.
Yeah.
8 diced tomatoes.
8 diced, not sliced tomatoes.
Yes.
8 specifically because 8's
it's a texture thing. It's a texture thing.
Balance is probably one of the best things for long-term health, where if you're jumping on the train for something that just looks really fancy and funky, you're probably going to get tired of it really quickly. And you probably need just a few of some more middle of the road things. Like, where are some low hanging fruit things that we can knock off right off the bat? Like, can you eat a little better? Can you sleep a little better? Can you control how many calories you intake in a day? You can't really track how many calories you're burning out throughout the day because most of these things are not really standard good evaluations, but you can control your input. Yeah. One thing you can always control, you can control what goes right in your yap. Yeah. And probably just actually being accountable for things. Like you need to be accountable. And if you're not getting results, that might be the primary reason. If you start writing stuff, if you write stuff down, or you'd be surprised how many people don't want to, you simply ask someone, okay, everything you eat for the next 6 days, I want you to take a picture of and text me. You might as well be asking to go through someone's secret file on their computer. Like, people,
maybe
like,
that
yo, man.
would be, no, that's the fucking coaching of the future. Contact lenses that we have access to a camera that's built in. There is no denying it. There's no,
Aram,
this is all they're just
Aram,
sending some of the pictures.
To put down the cinnamon bun.
Yeah.
Set
How did you
down
know?
the cinnamon
Cochlear.
bun.
Yeah, cochlear implant. The freaking contact lenses. Every now and then you just open it up and look.
I mean,
Oh
just
no,
look.
actually, no, that'd be bad.
Elon's.
That'd be bad. I
We
don't
got
want to see.
microchip. We got microchips and brains now. We can do anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
You have like you have a client, they're like, why are you looking at the ceiling for so long? And then you hear in the background. You're looking at the ceiling for
rustling.
a while.
I hear a bag rustling and the sound of delicious crunching. Sounds like it's potato chips.
Oh man.
They
Well,
are
listen,
delicious though.
we appreciate you and coming on and keeping us entertained. We like to leave all of our guests with a little trick question.
Oh.
Bye.